Hi, welcome to the launch of Sculpture Prints, the lifestyle collection for Davines 2021. We, as in the Conceptual collection, moved away from digital photography, shooting the whole project on film. Once again, keeping the authenticity and the transparency at the heart of the collection. The hair in this collection, it was aimed to be ready to wear, relaxed, and producing usable inspiration and techniques for today's client. It's a lifestyle collection which doesn't exist solely to make noise in the media, but to be utilised by the Davines hairdresser, and for this work and the salon services developed within it to be a tool to provide creative freedom in every hairdresser's day-to-day. I think that the best brands reconfigure these designs, adding small details in fresh ways to create a combination of newness and nostalgia which makes them relevant for today's wearer. So again, shooting on film in the natural sunlight with no post-editing to enhance the colours or shapes, combined with chic, simple makeup and styling, we feel produced a collection which has a timeless aesthetic and an aesthetic which represents the artisan spirit of Davines. So we created a documentary that's going to take you inside the shoot process, inside the preparation process of Ashley and myself, to really share with you what goes into creating a look like this. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Sculpture Prints. For many years when I worked in a salon, I approached my list of clients that I had that day from an education hairdressing standpoint. And then I was kind of getting to a point where I felt like I was repeating my work and my clients were paying for my hands and not my mind. I'd got to the point where I was owned by my techniques, but then the decision I made was to stop thinking as a hairdresser that's been trained in techniques and start to think more as a designer.
As soon as you start trying to please others, you lose your authenticity, and then you're just creating the same work that's already out there. And I don't think creativity can flow properly if you're feeling constricted in any way.
Once I'd made this switch in my mind, a client would sit down in the chair and I'd start to talk to them. And rather than think, okay, I'm going to do this technique on you, I'd start to think, how do I want them to look? Because if you judge someone in a holistic way and you listen to them and really listen to them and make this more design-led approach that allows you to, even if it's just a minor alteration to the colour and the shape, that can be absolutely transformative to that person, and they're a client for life. With the blonde images that we created, we knew that we wanted to create two lighter images. And thinking along the route of thinking like a designer, as we just discussed, I started to look at the way people apply toners and the way I've applied toners in the past. And I think the toner is one of, if not the most important part of the lightening process. When you're lightening, of course, you're changing the hair colour and you're lifting quite substantially, so that's important. But the toner is the final thing that people are going to look at. It's going to give you the engagement with your friends and your family and yourself in the mirror. So I've always found it a little odd that a lot of that is done at the backwash, when the client's head's back and they maybe have one type of toner here, one type of toner here, and it's all put on almost like a shampoo sometimes. And I thought, well, why not be more accurate with the toner, and why not thinking along this designer-led thing? Think about the hair as a sculpture. So the way that myself and Ashley approached the blonde images was, so certainly with one, Bella, fantastic, great character, a lady from Colombia. Cut her a really kind of cute little fringe in, and then I started to open up around the face using the scissors and the razor in combination, and it started to reveal all these little kicks and nuances and movements around the face. So I did the haircut and I allowed it to dry naturally, and then brought her back over to Ashley, and we discussed just creating a mask of more of a slightly darker chocolate tone through the fringe in a little triangle, and then accentuating these flicks. So Ashley took an artist paintbrush and started to just paint freehand, triangle up, all the way to the top, so it's narrow and then widens out.
And we're just feathering this through here.
Exactly.
I'm going to leave this little corner here so that it has that veil.
Yeah, it diffuses the darker mask, and then just through here and through here.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Cool.
That was myself and Ashley looking at Bella's hair as a sculpture.
We want to make people think outside the box, to get hairdressers to think about the whole shape. We wanted to create this whole idea of like painting on the hair.
We kind of thought of the hair as a static shape that we were just going to paint freehand. Some people might find it almost seems risky or unusual to think of a hair as a designer painting a sculpture, but I think it's actually less risky because when we looked at Bella's hair as a sculpture and visually added the darker mask of chocolate, we knew exactly where that colour was going to be. We knew that this little kick that had happened during the haircut was going to have this chocolate tone through it because we'd physically held it in our fingers and painted it.
Each collection has a red thread running through it. This idea of sculpting, of being able to use the hair not just as a hair but as a medium to create art with, but an art that's still wearable and not crazy, and that stylists are not going to be frightened of. For me, is what's really beautiful and exciting about this collection.
So for our second blonde image, alongside Bella, we had Chrisley. Chrisley was from Costa Rica, and she had a round base 3 hair. And using Century of Light, Ashley pre-lightened her hair. But to respect the integrity of her hair, but also to respect her ethnicity and the hair type she has and the area of the world that she comes from. So we created almost like a warm, like peachy magnolia as a base, as a beautiful sheet of colour. So
And it just kept it. And we just do shampoo and conditioner.
2 good shampoos, 1 conditioner just through the mid-length and then semi-blow dry.
Yeah.
Really light. Perfect. And using the Heart of Glass range, the sheer glazed for me to blow dry and to style it, then using the shampoo and conditioner and the treatment. The hair was, even after such a big colour change process, was still like glass, really, really beautiful. We wanted to go a step beyond that and start to think around what would this service be for Chrisley if she was my client, halfway through the journey of her colour before she comes back to see me to have the roots done. We sat down with Ashley and we started to talk about, and I'd been exploring painting ponytails. So putting a ponytail in the hair, weaving quite a thick elastic, so the actual elastic of the ponytail is at least 1 inch in width, and then working with different toners to paint on. I did a very, very simple haircut, 1 length haircut, and added some internal texture going through when the hair was dry and slicing out from the root, so she could move it, but it still felt like a sheet of hair. There was no layers in it. Added a little bit of texture around the front. We developed a technique called sculptoning, which involves thinking of the hair as a sculpture. So in this case, we created a ponytail, and then we paint the ponytail in the same way that an artist may look at a sculpture and want to accentuate certain areas with light or shadow certain areas with darker tones. We are painting the ponytail to create a sheet of creamy blonde colour going into a very strong panel of a deeper, more beigey blonde, and then fading back out into the same tone. Once that tone had developed, we rinsed it, and then as we cut the elastic, this line of toner just falls forward. So you see the elastic line gives it the kind of shadow of almost like a bob. And it's, as Chrisley started to move her head, it was just a really, really interesting way to add something to this sheet of beautiful blonde hair. Ashley, who coloured your hair today, I think what the great thing that she's done is she's not tried to make you into like a European kind of milky ash blonde. She's made you into your blonde, which I think that's the key, right?
Yeah.
We don't really believe putting people into like trend boxes, like you have to fit into this. It's more about like what's right for you as the person. What was fantastic developing these looks is Ashley and I both felt completely unrestricted. Every product range, whether it's a colour, whether it's a styling product, should provide freedom to the hairdresser. That's the whole job of the product range. We were fortunate enough to be working with the new Heart of Glass range, which comes in a shampoo, a conditioner, treatment, and a sheer glaze. A hairdresser that has Davines in their salon is attracted to Davines because they have a certain aesthetic eye and a certain aesthetic standard and a certain moral and social values. That's the reason you would be attracted to Davines, because the products are high functioning, high performance. The aesthetic of the products and the whole company it appeals to people that have good taste and good aesthetic. And also then from a sustainability and a regeneration aspect, it aligns with people that have similar like social and moral values.
I find a lot of equilibrium, a lot of balance when it comes to ages, when it comes to beauty geographies, palette of colors, palette of techniques. I find it very global and very inclusive. This collection represents the human beauty, and Davines puts human at the center.
Well, we hope you enjoyed taking a closer look at the Sculpt Toning collection. I hope that documentary gave a window and an insight into the process that Ashley and myself took when creating this collection. With these images, it was our aim to create work which people would feel at their best while wearing it. Approaching these blonde looks with a design-led approach, thinking in the way an artist would approach painting a sculpture. This enabled us to use new techniques to lighten, but more importantly, tone blonde hair. It's our hope that this unique approach to enhancing blonde hair will provide new and exciting possibilities for your day-to-day salon work. And what we would like to do now is go in depth into one of the looks.
So the look that we want to share with you today is this one, as we feel it best represents the Sculpt Toning technique. Considering the life cycle of a client's colour led us to create this Sculpt Toning technique. Any two complementary blonde tones can be used for this interim colour, which adds a new dimension to blonde hair during the course of the client's colour journey. Working with the underlying pigmentation to create a blonde for Chrisley, not for us. Designing a tone which looks like she could have been born with it in respect to her skin tone and her features. It takes time, patience, and knowledge to lift to a blonde like this. All products, whether they are colour, care, or styling, should exist to provide freedom to the hairdresser. The new Heart of Glass range provides the ultimate freedom. With creating blonde hair for the looks in our Sculpture Print series, we created huge transformations on people with a natural dark base, safe in the knowledge that the Heart of Glass range will provide the health and integrity which is vital for great looking blonde hair. In this case, the Heart of Glass range enabled us to work with Chrisley and take her from her natural dark base of a 4 to this beautiful warm blonde without loss of condition. This is a colour concept which can be done in the salon on the same day or as an add-on service weeks after the initial blonde. This ensures we are providing the client with a complete colour journey and a change in mindset for the hairdresser.
Shooting characterful people on film in natural light without post-editing the hair was done in the hope that in removing any digital barriers for the viewer, these images will have an instant connection for you and your clients. Creating portraits which can exist outside of the hair industry and be a useful tool for hairdressers to share with their clients. We felt the more digital elements, the more post-editing is done to an image. We believe this creates barriers between the image and the person viewing it. Something being as real and as tangible as possible means that the client can easily visualize themselves wearing that look. When creating a lifestyle collection, it's important to put yourself in the mind of the person who will be using the technique. to put yourself in the mind of the hairdresser, thinking of two things mainly. One, is this going to introduce something new to the client, which still feels familiar enough that the client is open to this change, and that the technique and the process of creating the look interests the hairdresser, allowing them to move out of the day-to-day techniques. With this look, we thought of the hair as a sculpture. Thinking of it as a solid shape allowed us to work from a design point of view rather than a simple application of a technique. I've always felt that the toner process of the colour is the most important, as this gives the final look which the client is most interested in. Rather than being applied at the wash basin, I've always felt there could be a more targeted, bespoke approach to toning hair. With this in mind, we created our sculpt toning concept, a ponytail with a side parting, and thinking of this ponytail as a sculpture, we looked at ways we could darken areas while leaving other areas lighter. Painting it freehand allowed us to be more targeted with the final shade. This simple haircut served as a canvas for the sculpt toning service. A one-length haircut with a deep internal texture enables the wearer to have an easily styled one-length look, but with movement and body if they would like. We wanted these images to stand for everything that Davines is about. Tasteful, stripped-back design, embracing uniqueness, sustainable beauty, and making a statement by doing things differently in our industry. This is the hair identity we'd like to share with you. So, I hope that gave you more of an insight and more of an idea into the Sculpture Prints collection and the sculpt toning technique. The thing that I felt you worked on that was most impressive to me was the working with this variety of models. They have different ethnicities, they have different hair types, they have different hair depth, but the hair was very, very personal to them. And I know that was something that you were quite focused on.
Definitely. I feel with hair colour in particular, it's really important to create it and get it right so it's right for that person, so that that person can look like they were born with that hair colour. And I think with Chrisley in particular, it was about getting that correct blonde, even though she was naturally dark. It was making sure that the blonde that I gave her was the blonde that if she was born blonde, that's exactly how she would look.
And I think as we touched on in the video, having the Heart of Glass range to support this, it meant that we could push those blonde tones and still be safe and secure in the fact that we could maintain the condition and the integrity of them. Because something that we were very particular about during the casting process was we sat down and really spoke to the person and got to know who they were, to see that, yes, they will work with the look aesthetically, but will it suit their personality? Will it suit their character? Because I believe certainly in very transparent, stripped back film portraits like these, that if that look was only done on an aesthetic basis, it would come through in the final image. And we wanted every image that we've created for Davines across all three of the collections we've shared with you over the last few months has been done with a very strong narrative in mind, almost to have a very cinematic approach, to really show the process behind it. Because we feel that something that I particularly love about Davines is the journey is just as important to us as the end product. And I think that we've tried to make that be shown throughout these images. So we created one more video that documents the development process, it documents the photography process, and it documents that analog approach that we took. So, for one final time, I hope you enjoy the Sculpture Prints collection. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch it, and I hope that we see you soon.
We could drive along in the ocean reflecting the sun, or make a bed of green atop a wide open scene. We could stay out late until the sun sets past 8, and the cotton candy haze mirrors the warmth of your gaze. Summer is for falling in love.